All right. Morning, guys. As George Carlin would say, Andrea, it's 2 minute warning. Get your shit together. Um,
No, no, start.
right. Um, so some of you have gotten to meet me. And I actually called this guy who has this product and I said, "Are you going to be at the boot camp?" He's like, "No." And I said, "Do you want me to talk about it?" Because I'd gotten involved about 5 years ago when I was asked to take a look at it for another client. But I'm going to talk about OpenVMS backups to Windows. I am not a fan of Windows, but I am a fan of this backup tool. Um, and I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction, why OpenVMS backups are important, the backup challenges for OpenVMS, the case study that brought me to Knapsack. And I don't mean to say pricing because I have no idea really what the pricing is, but there is a discount code that he will honor if you if you carry through a full purchase of the product, right? So if you don't know me, I've been doing VMS since I was about 12. And I started with OpenVMS 3.2 um, in my in my college year, and I got hired before I graduated in my sophomore year. So I've been doing it since Axe Chick, the razor people, was their first VMS system. Um, Familiar with all all the network stacks, which will be important for for this conversation. It does require TCP/IP stack. Um, I've been doing system administration mostly for the last 20 odd years. Um, Application experience. And if I had a claim to fame, it's that I can do an automated conversion of IBM CICS to ACMS. So if you give me your COBOL code and your BMS map sets, I have to admit, I'd have to rewrite those scripts from the beginning. They wouldn't take me about a month, but I can convert all that so it runs as an ACMS task. So on OpenVMS. And I don't know that I would have given myself that job today because I was 24 years old when they gave me that project. And it was a huge project.
So it was yesterday?
Yeah. So backup challenges for OpenVMS. The OpenVMS backup utility is solid. It does its job. Um, it is efficient and effective. I'm not sure why they needed, well, I guess they needed some sort of librarian, which is what ABS gives you. So you can do a search and say, where is this file? On what tape can I find this file or this directory or this disk? And SLS, those are all standard products. I'm not as adept at ABS and SLS as I am at just giving me straight up backup to do the job, right? I've also worked with tape backup, um, and it works just fine. I don't have any issues there, and most of my backup history in recent years goes back to 552. So if you're running on legacy hardware, I can talk about it back to 552 easily. Mission critical systems, reliability and stability. You need to make sure that you can get your backups. You need to define your retention periods. You know, you had that problem where you lost 3 months worth of data. You know, we need to verify our backups. I'm probably the only one on the East Coast who knows nightly that my backup is good because when I do my backup to virtual tape, I do the restore to the DR site immediately. So I write the tape and then I read the tape somewhere else. But you know, backup is not real, it's not confirmed until the restore is done, right? You have all the successful backups in the world, but if you can't read the tape, read the save set, or you can't boot the disk that you restored, then it wasn't a good backup. Data integrity and security. The one thing I think backup is missing today is some sort of encryption, because that's what I've been asked by my client. can I encrypt my backups? And the answer is no. You should have thought about that. But my VMS is so secure. I don't know how you're gonna get to it, right? How are you gonna break down that safe? I mean, I guess you could. I mean, any person smarter than me could probably break down that safe set, figure out what the data is. But that's an awful lot of work if you don't know what you're actually looking for.
It's already pretty secure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not gonna lose that file.
Disaster recovery, the key thing is that the system just be bootable, that it captures the boot block. And VMS backup has always been successful at doing that. You've often got compliance and regulatory requirements where if they're doing audits, they might ask you to restore a file or a database from a particular period of time. And you've got to build into your backup schedule what that retention period looks like, that you can accommodate those audits, right? And data archiving. I had a client who had backup tapes going back to 1991, physical DLTs. And he would ask for, I need a restore from, and I'm like, okay. But that was a separate set of tapes and I could go find it and do the restore. I do know someone who will virtualize those physical vintaged. Yes. I do know someone who will virtualize those tapes. In fact, I helped them virtualize 300 of them. So, and we were able to read them without issue. So if you need that, just ask the question. Whoops, I went too far. The challenges with OpenVMS backups are the reliance on the physical media and the requirement for somebody to go load the tape and to trust that they loaded the tape and didn't leave the same tape stuck in the drive. Storage capacity and retention costs for backups, so whether or not you're keeping them on site or sending them off site. Time constraints on data backup and the recovery of a large quantity of data. Backup is backup. I mean, it's only as fast as your connection from the tape drive or whatever container to the container you're writing to. So I had one client, the backups would start at 5:30 and finish at 6 a.m. So they would start at 5:30 at night and run till 6:30 a.m. in the morning. Once I virtualized the system and wrote the virtual tapes, the backups were done and restored within 6 hours. But again, it's only as fast as the slowest thing in the infrastructure, right? Participating in network solutions and IT infrastructure. Customers are often using products like Veeam or Commvault. I'm trying to think of who else is out there. Net Backup is the only one that has a client that runs on OpenVMS. So if your enterprise backup is running Net Backup, then you can usually run a Net Backup client. And I'm talking 552 to 842. So whatever version of the OS you're running on, Net Backup will probably be able to provide you with a client. Nobody else does. Store server, but it's 842 all the way back. Oh, send me that name. Send me that one. So, and then the other one is if you're on VMware and you're relying on data storage snaps, data storage duplication. The problem is it's capturing the data at a moment in time, and you don't know whether or not you're ending up with a bootable disk. You don't know. It can restore the whole environment. It doesn't give you the granularity for a single file. And the data encryption issue I mentioned before, backup doesn't give you a means of doing that. Would be nice in the new version. Yeah. It would be nice in the new version if backup had an encrypt qualifier that allowed you to encrypt the safe set. But again, it would have you also have to take into consideration the time, right? The processing time required to do that. How did we go backwards? Oh, sorry. So this is 2007, 2018, maybe 19. I was challenged to look at a product to solve a problem for a customer. The customer was separating from its parent company. The parent company had umpteen campuses internationally. And at each campus, they had sites running OpenVMS on, this particular company ended up with like 72 VMS systems across 15 campuses. But they were all participating in a ABS backup solution that relied on DECnet back to some centralized servers. And they had 5 years to separate and get off of, be weaned off mother, right? So they didn't have, and they waited, of course, till the very last damn minute, because that's what they do. And they waited till the last minute. And I mean, when I say last minute, like the last 6 months. They didn't have tape drives. They didn't have a backup solution. And my boss at the time said, I found this product. Can you go check it out? And they were running 552. The site enterprise solution was Veeam. And I don't have a client. I don't have a physical tape drive. I don't really want a physical tape drive because of the hardware issues with not only the media, but the physical tape drive itself. And we needed to make sure that we had a recoverable disk. This is all physical VAXs. Okay, all physical VAXs. So he asked me about this product called Knapsack. I've never heard of it, and I was extremely skeptical because anything running on Windows can't be good. Not for VMS anyway. And so he said, test it out. So I got a downloadable. If you go to the website, they will give you a download link, and you can do a download of the software, and they'll give you a 30-day key and the instructions, and you can set it up and you can test it to your heart's content. And if you need a new key, they'll send you a new key. Right, Windows, the Knapsacks runs with a server app on the Windows side and a client app on VMS. The VMS client is available from 552 all the way up to 842L3. So it'll run from VAXs to integrities. They have ported it to x86. I haven't tested it yet. He sent me the link Tuesday morning to download and test it. It's a little different in that it takes advantage of the logical tape drive. And I don't know what he did to do that, but it comes as part of 9.2. And I'll have to play with that some. But essentially, not only is it working on the old version of VMS, but it's going to be available for X92. It is in beta test. It's about to go to production. The Knapsack server itself runs on Windows XP to Windows 2019. So he doesn't care what version of Windows you have. And some of these legacy environments, do have XP running internally. But, yes, you can run it on the latest and greatest. It's highly optimized. It uses highly optimized data compression techniques. And I've seen it.
Does it do incremental backups
It's
or it's always full backup of the device?
It does. So if you look at the backup qualifiers on the backup command, it has all those qualifiers. So yes, it will do fulls, it will do images, it will do differentials, it will do incrementals. I like a full backup followed by differentials. So that the only thing I have to do is restore the full backup and then the differential tape. I don't have to, the incremental tapes, I have to go back and then restore all the incremental tapes. But yes, it has the same switches that backup does. So if you're comfortable using backup, you will be comfortable using knapsack. The only additional switch is to specify the IP port number that you're communicating with the Windows server with. And I'll have that in here.
And,
I know.
and if, I understand you didn't test it, but
Nine
for
to
the sake of 9 to 2, it is cost, doesn't matter.
What do you mean?
Well, the 9 to 2 can run on the Linux cost, Windows.
Oh, yeah, no, host has nothing to do with it. Host has nothing to do with it, right?
It doesn't care.
Doesn't care. This is a VMS, you install it with product install, with the install command and install it on VMS.
TCP/IP.
And it's over a TCP/IP port. So whatever backup strategy, and assuming it's a good backup strategy, whatever backup strategy you're running now, you could run with knapsack and simply replace the backup command with your knapsack command. Right? And it's not quite, yeah, it's about that simple. It's about that simple.
Knapsack install on the.
So knapsack has two pieces. There's a configuration piece on the server.
Are you
You
getting?
think the arrow keys work? So here's a screenshot on an old Windows server. You set up the services on the Windows server and you identify who your clients are, what port number they're coming in on. You give the service name and you give it a path where you want it to write the path sets to. And they call them path sets, not safe sets. You give it a path folder to where you want to write them to and what you want to call the log file. And we can set up multiple servers to run, multiple clients to run to one server. We can set up a cluster so that any node in the cluster can run the knapsack command. But they'll come in via a different port number, but they'll all go through the same path. So in the particular example I did, we had one Windows server per building, and anywhere from 3 to 12 with VMS clients would all communicate back to that Windows server. That Windows server was participating in the Veeam infrastructure. So the Veeam infrastructure backups would go ahead and back up the files that were in those folders. Right? On the VMS side, he had some examples here. It doesn't matter whether it's Alpha or Integrity or VAX or soon to be x86. Right? And as I said, it is a beta test. I do have, if you fill out the form when you go to his website, he will give you a download link so you can test it on x86. Right? Each server has a unique path to where the safe sets are stored. You manage your Windows space just like you would your tape library. You manage how much, if you have so much space and you know how much your backup, how long your retention period is. I'm big in a habit of naming the safe sets with a date. And then we had a background shell script that went ahead and deleted the backup safe sets that were older than 120 days. So I could control and manage the space that was running, that I had available on my Windows server.
So that's all done from this tool, not from the Veeam side.
Right. Veeam is only looking at the path.
Gotcha.
Whatever
So
tool
you
you
just
comp
rebuy
on,
and fix up
it
whatever.
says whatever's new, give it to me, right? But you are running the backups to that path, to that folder.
You create what to, like, what
Right.
to say, yeah.
Right. And then how granular do your retention sets get? So if you wanted to set a retention different for each of the nodes or at the volume level or the.
So that's entirely up to you. So what I did when I installed this for them, I created a set of knapsack logicals that included knapsack $full, which was what day do I run my full backups on? I had a knapsack dollar retention underscore daily, retention underscore weekly, retention underscore monthly, and I assigned it a value. And then my backup script got rid of stuff based on those logicals that I configured.
I see. My question was more on, can you have the clients in different retention? So if you have like 120 days.
That's entirely up to you. You get to
And that goes granular down to like file level? Or?
down to the file level. Down to the file level. I wrote the script that we rolled out across all 15 campuses to do the install, so they all looked exactly the same. And I've suggested to the developer, I said, if you want my script, you can have my script as a starting point because it goes through and asks you those questions, right? So you can create full or incremental backups of the disk stored in the pack sets on Windows. You can restore the disk, the directories, or select specific files from the pack set. Same way you would have done it with backup/select. It will do it. The one thing I will tell you is something needs to be fixed in our version of backup. Is if I give backup a file name, it will find and do the restore of the file, but it keeps reading the damn tape. All the backups are in alphabetical order, right? The files are listed in directory alphabetical order. So if I tell you to go to directory, download dot such and such, once backup left that directory, it should have stopped, right? Once it had found whatever it was to restore, it should have stopped. But no, it keeps reading to the end of the tape, which is annoying. So I've actually, I've had cases where I've got to restore, 100 million block file, and I submit the backup and I submit another backup, another batch job to watch to see when the file gets there. When the file is complete, I kill the backup job, the restore job, because it would run for another hour, and it's silly. It should know that I've restored the file. I can stop now, but it gets a little OCD and keeps going.
Yeah, but on that note, if you, just to give a silly example, you wanted to back up everybody's login.com. If it stopped on the first person's, nobody else gets.
But no, this is on the restore.
Oh.
On the restore. If I ask for a specific file
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
or a specific directory tree or a whole directory tree, he restores it. And then he keeps walking like he's going to find something else, and he's not.
He tries to find out something else.
So the knapsack command looks like the backup command. You can find the knapsack image to be a symbol called knapsack, and then you can do a knapsack /full/record, like you can do with VMS backup. The WinPC is defined in the host table for your IP stack. VMS 5.2 and 6, I think, have a limit on the length of the name of the Windows node name. I think the number is 6, maybe 7. I think maybe 7. So you need to shorten the name and put it into your host file. And assign, whatever the IP address is, and then you tell it what's the name of the save set you're saving. And I did them based on this label, the date. I put an F in the file name to say it was full. .pack/port equals 7003. So on the Windows server side, when it comes in on 7003, it knows where to put the pack set. I can use the ignore equals interlock. Ignore equals label has no bearing here, right? But ignore equals interlock, no backup. I can add all those switches, all those work. I can specify this differential backup, so it'll back up everything that was done since the recorded full. And I like to use the statistics command because it gives me the details about how much compression it achieved and how long it took. Right. let's see, the image backup will in fact, if I see here where I did a fold, if I've done it with a slash image, it will make sure it captures the boot block. The network restore. I do the knapsack again, I tell it what port I'm pulling the data from, what PC and what's the name of the slave set and where I'm writing the file. Again, it looks, the only difference with this command right here is the port number, right? The port is what's telling it what PC, what the ultimate path the server is gonna write the file to.
One question, this is exactly what I was saying. So, this is the part on the server side, which is the Windows side, and because you have potentially multiple clients, does it mean you have configured different ports on the server side as well for each client?
Yep, so you may have missed that side. Did I do it here? Yeah. So here on the server side, on the Windows side, you define your clients. You assign each one a port number. That port number points to a particular folder path. And so when you write to that port number, it will, the path set will land in the folder that you specified when you configured.
Is that the only way that it uses to distinguish which client is? Because let's say by mistake I do use a port number from another client. Would then therefore make the backup on the, let's call it the wrong place.
Yeah, because the port's pointing to the path.
So it doesn't use like a node name. That's just the port.
No, it just uses the port.
Okay.
So when I did this, what I did was I kept, he likes to use the 7,000 to 7,000, well, when we did ours, it was 7,000 to 7,009. I assigned each of the nodes 7,001 through 7,009, but 7,000 was my management port. So I could always, even if the backup was running, I could go through port 7,000 and do a directory of an AppSec folder, of any folder, to see what was going on, right? But I kept port 7,000 for a management perspective. So yeah, they could have written to different ports. Knapsack does require a license, but he does not necessarily force you to use one port or the other. You're the backup master. So the network backup, you have to specify what port. That will inherently tell Windows Server which folder that we're looking for this safe set on, and we do the restore. The restore can look just like your regular backup command. The only difference is there's a slash port.
Does it have an option to restore the whole batch of full with differentials? And
Well, when you do a differential, you only need the full and then the differential. It's a manual process. You would have to,
when you backing up, yes. And when you are restoring, you have a full backup and a number of differentials. For example, every day you
every day. Did a
and
different.
then you want to, your disk died, you want to restore it. So you have full, you have 6 differentials. It would be nice to say, okay, restore this batch.
Okay, so 2 things. One is you're writing the restore command the same way that you're writing, because there's no GUI interface here from the VMS. The restore is done from the VMS side, right? So you run the backup command to do the restore. When you're doing differentials, the only one you have to restore is the last one. If you're doing incrementals, you have to do all the ones in between, right? But if you're doing differentials,
That's why you don't like.
that's why I don't like incrementals. Okay, because I don't want to mess with all those. And in fact, you need to do the most recent incremental first, and then do all the others in between. Because if you have data files that were updated, then it gets messy, right? So always do the most recent incremental first, because that gets your data file. If you have actual data files down there, and they won't get touched. You'll always have the latest of the version of the data file, right? Because you don't end up with multiple data files, you end up with one that has modified dates, right?
One other question. The thing I don't see here is like authentication or credential, things like that. So what sort of prevents one node overwriting another node backup, either by mistake or
What prevents?
because I could just go in my node and if I know the port of the other node, I could just go in like, oh, let me just dump a lot of garbage in there. So backup.
Well, you're naming the safe set, so whatever, if you dumped another safe set with the same name, I mean, you're naming the file, so nothing's preventing you from doing that. I mean, I would consider that malicious. Right? Right? Nothing's preventing you from doing that. There's no, because you had to log into VMS to run the command.
Yeah, but potentially I could have, let's say, access to only a single node. If I have the knowledge that this is being run node, then I could actually, yeah, maliciously. Something the other
You got a lot of time on your hands.
nodes.
He's a kid, right? Yes.
On VMS, I actually have seen an attack in the real world where someone did something like that to overwrite all the backups.
I mean, you've got to look at security on the Windows server as well, right?
Right.
To say that I have access, right? There's a handshake that validates that you have the knapsack key, and you can install knapsack with privilege, right? So that you can only run it if you have privilege to run it. So there's some things you can do if you're in such an environment that becomes an issue.
And you know if the transfer is transfer is
It is not encrypted, but it can be. So there's a /encrypt option that will add to your processing time. I haven't done a test to see how much it adds, but
so that's the dot pack itself.
again, with it all depends on your environment, right? So if you're writing to a Windows server that the storage is encrypted, then yes, it is encrypted. If you backed it up with the /encrypt command, then the contents are encrypted. So it all depends on your environment, right? And if I needed to select out, one of the key things is not only being able to restore a whole disk directory and retain all the OpenVMS constructs, but also to be able to restore a particular file or group of files from a particular path. So the same select statement that you would have used in backup to do the restoring is the same select statement we would use with knapsack.
On the restore, if you want to restore it to a new host, you just give it the other host's thing.
Well, you're running this again from the host where you want to do the restore.
So you just, instead of reading 7.3, 7.2, right? Because that's what you were saying earlier was you do a nightly restore onto something else.
Well, yes. So I had a client, I didn't install knapsack for them. They're running the virtual tapes, but if I did the backup to a particular path using port 7003, and I needed to do the restore on the other from the other server, I would just have the other server use port 7003.
Oh.
So it could read it. Or I could define a 7002 port that points to the same path and reads it, right? Right.
So you build your machine, you just point it back at the same port to read it.
Yeah, they've had, I mean, the challenge is the system disk, right? Because this is installed on the system disk. So what happens when you blow away your system disk? What happens when your system disk fails and you need to do that restore? What do you do then? Right? Because you don't have an IP stack, you don't have. So what they gave us is a self-extracting path set. So one of the things I can do is go ahead and do the backup either over the network to a self-extracting pack set on a disk. Or I can create that that I should have taken this off. This isn't right. But take off the server node name. I would do, in addition to my flows and my differentials, I would also do this self-extracting backup to an image, to a back set that I kept on the system. I ran those on Sunday morning. And so on Sunday morning, I would just do a self-extracting pack set of the system disk, and I would stick it on one of the disks, other than the system disk. And if you had a failure of the system disk, you could do a minimal boot and run that self-extracting image, and it would do the restore. So
Have you done that like in a test environment?
I did that in a production environment,
And it worked.
and it worked. I have proof. I can give you the reference. Yeah, they lost their system disk. It was a 552 system. Fortunately, VMS allows you to define an alternate bare minimum backup disk, right? So we did a minimum startup on another disk, had the pack set, ran the pack set to do the restore, and the system disk was then booted. Crazy. Some guy with an integrity system had a similar situation where he lost his system and he had the pack set, he had a self-extracting pack set sitting out on the Windows server. And he grabbed it and he was able to restore the self-extracting Windows restore. And then eventually he could then, once his system was up, he could then go get the latest backup. But if it wasn't for that self-extracting pack set, he would have been done. So I like that tool. It works. I mean, it's really, it's just a sneaky self-extracting zip file, right? Let me see if I have, yeah. So this is what allows you to do the restore, do the backup. So I did the backup to a local disk and I put /system, which is what makes it create a self-extracting image. And then when the system came up, I initialized DK0, so I booted it from an alternate disk. I initialized DK0, I defined the knapsack command. I ran the knapsack command. And I got my system back. It's a great product. It's relatively inexpensive. It was 5 years ago. I did print a line from the statistics and I've tried to clean it as much as I can. My knapsack command was doing an incremental to a node, to a Windows node. I named the file. I tend to name my files node name, label, the date of the pack set, and a code to tell me whether it's incremental and what port I was writing to. You can see the elapsed time was 156,000 blocks on this incremental, and it completed in 21 minutes. This is an old VAX 4000. And it achieved 72% compression. The warnings that occurred, what I did was before I run the knapsack command, I did a define /user for sys$error to point to a log file. So I captured all the output that it generated in that file of the same, of a similar name, so that I could then go back and look and see what actually happened. Compact data has been around since 1986. I mean, I didn't learn about them till 2017. They have a number of window products that interface with VMS. So there may be other things that are useful. I think their first product was the FCX product, which allows for file compression. And the backpack product is the precursor to knapsack. It does remote backups to disk and tape for OpenVMS on other servers. So where backup wouldn't allow you to do that, Backpack does. But I've never played with any of the other products. info@compact data. I've asked him, why is the T left off of compact? This is because at the time they created the site, somebody else, compact data existed. And they sold disk drives. And so they modified the name and they've never tried to acquire. So you have to remember, take the T out of it. And there's a phone number there. You can call and ask for Gene. They have a number of other products. They will also read your pack sets. They have a tool, they take copy, can read safe sets on Windows. So if you move your safe set to Windows, you could run tape copy and read it and pull out the files there too. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, nothing else. But yeah, it's a really good product, real solid product. It's used internationally. And like I said, I rolled it out to 15 different campuses back in 2020. So, and it was a reasonable solution. I think all those sites ended up being less than 50K. So, and they could then participate in their enterprise backup solution.
Say, what we expect, what is inside of the set. Would there be without fit copy also needs to do that on the client side or the investment? Can you just sort of like list the content of what you have?
Well, yes, knapsack has a /list command. So any command, any switch you had with backup is there with knapsack. And also it has a knapsack /dir. So you can do a directory of what's at that port path from VMS.
So it's nice because actually the file will leave it, and that's it. So it goes to the network and then it leaves.
Yeah. And like I said, I was absolutely skeptical. I'm like, it's Windows. No, this isn't gonna work. And remarkably, it did, and it did repeatedly. My key concern was the system disk and the various versions of OpenVMS. And I tested it for 5.5.2, 6.2, and 7.3. So I have full confidence. Any other questions? So there's a bootcamp code if you go to the website, and there's an information form that you fill out. If you put Bootcamp 2024 AA, and say, you heard me talk about it, he will apply some discount. The pricing, I didn't specifically talk about pricing because I don't work for them. I don't know I know their pricing structure is based on the class of the machine. So VAXs are one price, alphas are another, integrity is a third. And the Windows product is the same no matter what. So the question is just how many systems are you having talk to that client, to that server? Mm-hmm. Right? So there's a license, there's cost for the server application, and then there's a cost per node. So it doesn't matter how many, if it's a GS80, it's part of that enterprise class alpha price. If it's they're saying VAX 6,000, it's going to be part of the VAX price, right? It's based on architecture. Any other questions? Oh, come on, guys. I wish I had some examples. I do have some sample code. I will, I wrote one big command procedure that did the install and the configuration and the daily backup job. I did it all in one file. But I think the key is to define a set of logicals that define your retention period, that define where your files are being, what port. So I had a logical called knapsack $port, knapsack $full, knapsack $retention _ daily. And that's how I managed my DCL script. Right, I have the backup job doing the cleanup of the older versions. I did a an expiration date on the file. So I could look for the files that had expired and then just delete those files. Yeah.
So you're
Just-
saying you sent them, yeah.
I've offered my DCL as an example. It was pretty specific for a client, but I would need to wash it a little bit so it didn't have all the client node names and addresses in it. But, you know, if he asks nice, I'll okay, put that together.
Yeah, we need-
Yeah, well, I asked him for a commission and I said, you know, I don't know how many people are gonna come out of this. But I do enjoy the product. It was easy to set up. It worked like it said it would, and it is screaming fast. Well, it'll only be as fast as your network interface to your infrastructure, right? So in my case, it was a bunch of access, physical access. But if you've got virtual systems running, it'll be even faster. Right, you got rid of your physical tape? Yep, yep. And you restored all the constructs of VMS, so, you know, you had all the file structure, all the security, all that stuff is there. And it doesn't matter. I think there's a version that actually runs on Linux, but it's a little cumbersome. From the server side. But yeah, it can run on any version of Windows you want it to.
Any chance you have tried auto development for across the internet?
But
Across the internet? Because technically it should work, but
yeah, I mean, if your firewall's not stopping you, I mean, it's your port number is pointing to an IP address, so.
they flash it.
Right, yeah. I mean, yeah, that I would, you know, the question would be how fast is your network and can it get it done fast?
So I think you mentioned something about a key. Client has a license key that it uses to talk to the server.
Right,
Okay,
right, so,
no random client on the internet
right,
could.
no,
Okay.
no random client on the internet could interface. You have to, when you create that service, you have to assign it the key.
That's so rapid, it's 96, that's still a little better than just no authentication at all.
Right, no, you have, they go hand in hand, so there's a key on the server and there's a key on VMS, and you have to tie the two together.
Will the
I
slides be
don't-
available?
Say that again?
Will the slides be available?
They're posting the slides and the conversations, the recordings online. I went looking for the 2017 Bootcamp slides and presentations, and to my surprise, when I opened up the page, my face popped up. And only because they'd listed all the speakers in alphabetical order. My last name's Arthur, so I was at the top of the list. And I said, all these years, if you went to that Bootcamp page, first page that pops up is mine. I know, I did, and I didn't know it. I didn't know it. I did not. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.